everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Timeout with Tackle What's Next, where we speak to athletes and executives about how sport has made a difference and changed the course of their lives, plus the lessons they've learned in life outside of the game. I'm your host, Danielle Berman. I'm the founder of Tackle What's Next, and we help athletes create impact outside of the game and help them find their purpose in life after sports. So thanks for taking a time out with us here at Tackle What's Next. I know it's been a while since we've done one of these. We took a few weeks off for the Thanksgiving holiday and getting geared up for 2021, but we wanted to make sure we closed out our 2020 conversations with a really good one. So we are in for a treat today. We have John Register joining us today on Timeout. John Register is a Paralympic Silver medalist. He's a Gulf War veteran. He's a TEDx speaker. He has worked as a global sports ambassador and has a company called Inspired Communications, where he helps teams understand their competitive advantage in times of adversity. John has an amazing story. I can't wait for you to hear more about his journey through sports, through learning and just really creating his positive mindset. So I see John's on. We're going to get right into this conversation and I'm going to bring him on screen. Hi, John. How are
Hey,
you?
what's going on? How you doing? Good to see you, Dee.
It's great to see you. Oh my goodness, how have things been? What have you been up to this
Oh,
year?
well, like way too much. What a year. I mean,
Yes,
that's like the question of the year, right? What have you been
exactly,
up to?
exactly.
And depending upon how people's mindsets, right, is how they will answer that question. So some
Mhm.
people say, no, nothing really, kind of wait until things get back to normal. And other people are saying, oh man, I've been jamming, I've been crushing, I've been doing all these things. So I'm kind of on the other side, but I had these like 3 months of goose eggs, like in April, March, April, May, and June.
Mhm.
And then it wasn't after that I tried to get involved. It was actually during that time I wanted to show up in a more authentic way. So what I've been doing, I recently just got back from San Diego. I went out there because I knew because of the governor has shut that state down. I
Mhm.
went out to go write a book. So I started putting a dent in another book.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I did that. It's not completed, but I wanted to try to make a dent. And then I've been doing a lot of online speaking to a lot of different companies. It's been really good because they have shifted to like a digital format and remote format. So that's been great for me and our company. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like everything, speaking wise is virtual right now. So I'm guessing that's the big pivot that you had to make during the pandemic is instead of flying everywhere to do live speaking, it was virtually live. And that was a big
Yeah.
different adjustment. You might have extra hours in your day.
Absolutely. I mean, really, Danielle, what I found was, okay, yeah, everybody's going to make this shift, but I was doing a lot of the things anyway.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I would go out to make a presentation, I always did a pre-event video, so a pre-recorded video for the attendees, so let them get a chance to know me before I even step in the room. I would always show up early, so I would, I come in early on a Zoom call or on a Microsoft Teams call, whatever the platform might be, so that we can have a conversation just like we were in the room before. And then afterwards, I would do a follow-up video for them. So all those things stayed in place, and I realized what I could do is instead of just doing those videos as, hey, welcome, this is JR, and we're gonna chat about this, whatever topic we're gonna talk about, is I could actually pre-record some of my full content videos in snippets. Then we can go out to the park or the location, they can watch that video, come back, we have a dialogue about that, expand that into the chat, or expand it into a breakout session, or expand it into something else. So it became using kind of my communications background when I graduated from the University of Arkansas to really begin to look at how can I produce a show.
Mm-hmm.
And that shifted my entire mindset around just, oh man, we got to do another Zoom call. Well, they can be fun if you're engaging, if you can
Yeah.
like this, get engaged, and really, not that you got to be hyper with it, but that we're having a conversation, we're having a dialogue, we both feel connected to the conversation.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like too, it's that like everyone's saying, oh, Zoom fatigue, Zoom fatigue. And sure, there's a lot of Zoom calls, right? But I think your point about if it's an engaging call, you're not going to be fatigued because of it. You're going to be
Right.
excited. You're going to be like motivated because of it.
Energized.
Content. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So that's like who you're hanging around, right? you don't hang around people that are just kind of dragging you down. You want to stay around people that elevate you.
Yes.
And then maybe you have the strength and the capacity to help somebody else, you know, through their challenges.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm excited to hear that you've been able to really take that and run with it. And I'm sure a lot of people have benefited from like actually engaging in exciting Zoom calls and events with you. So that's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
You mentioned, you know, your experience at University of Arkansas, your communications background. Let's go back even further.
Yeah.
When did you first experience sports? Why did you choose track and field? Like, what were those first experiences for you?
That's such a great question. Here's why. Because as I was beginning to write out there in San Diego, I actually wanted to go to Kona, and I couldn't because of COVID, and I was going to be locked down for that. So I couldn't go. So I almost made it, but I made it to San Diego.
Okay, that's cool.
To a cliff, and I stopped there. So the reason, this is going to go in, the reason I didn't choose track and field.
Okay.
Somebody else chose track and field for me. I was a very good baseball player. And two things happened in baseball that shifted me in this direction. One was I tried out for the Pony League, and I was cut from that tryout. But I had one of those stellar tryouts over the course of these 3 or 4 days. I was hitting everything, fielding everything, running, stealing bases, you know, throwing people out from center field. I had a stellar tryout. My dad saw the entire thing. He's like, how could you get cut having this tryout? And I batted over 750, 800 in the junior league right after that. So I stole every base, stole home twice, threw 2 people out from center field to first base, right? So I was really a pretty good baseball player. I'm walking down the hall. That was 8th grade year. I'm walking down the hall my freshman year at Oak Park River Forest High School, and the baseball coach is coming towards me, and I'm really excited because, you know, does he know me? I want to try for the team and all that stuff. I'm really excited about it. And long story short is he winds up pulling me to the side and tells me he's not going to select me for the team without even looking, without even a tryout. And he thinks, and he said some other, you know, kind of things of just like, why would you even say that? But so he kind of steered me to track and field. And then in track and field, when I started, you know, doing pretty well my freshman year and then got moved up to the varsity team, I saw that for the most part, the first person across the line wins. So there's no subjectivity to it. There's no, I think that you might be good, and my bias is going to always influence my decision on how good you are, even though I might show you a greater talent. So yeah, that's how I got into track and field.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. As you think about a sport like track and field, you know, you either win or you don't. There's a referee saying, oh, no, this is a bad call or this. It's like they cross the line first, they win. Like that, it's that simple. So I love that, you know, that's the subjectivity is removed. And it must have been tough to hear that, you know, a sport that you really loved and you were really good at, you weren't going to get a shot. So that leads me to another, you know, kind of unexpected ending for you is when you experienced your injury. And, you know, this is as you're competing, you know, in track and field at the highest level. Like, how do you recover from these, you know, really like, this is it, your moment's over and it was out of your control completely. Like, how do you recover from that?
That's a great question. And I really believe it's the mindset that we go in with it. Are we going to go in with the deficit mindset? And I'm not saying that, you know, it's an easy process. What I am saying is that the mindset that we take into these conversations or into these experiences is, I share with my audiences now, is what is the atmosphere that you have when you enter into an environment? So think about NASA. They train in a pool to do maneuvers in space. In both atmosphere, it is illegal for the human body to operate without an atmosphere that you take with you, pumping in oxygen all the time. So if we take that analogy into any circumstance that we might have or event, what is the oxygen or the suit or that we're pumping into our suit that's going to have us stay sane in a shifted environment, right? When our environment shifts. So we see COVID happen and people lost their minds, right? I mean, people were like, I got to buy the toilet paper. I gotta, you know, stockpile food because we're fearful of things that we thought we could control. The second thing, you know, then we move on to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And we think we knew everything that we knew. So some people, that's where they came into this conversation. And African Americans like, this has been going on for 400 years. What are you talking about? Well, thanks for catching up, right? So some people lost their oxygen around that. Then we have a political election, very contentious. People lost their oxygen on both sides of the aisle around that. My way is the only way, and the only way to see it. And if you don't see it, you are horrible.
Yeah.
Right? So that is, we've lost our oxygen. So we have to begin to breathe that oxygen back. And I believe, in getting to your question, is going into that environment, what is the oxygen you're taking with you? For me, it was, I had a very strong faith in God, Christ, and that was what went into it. That didn't negate anything of me going through the experience at all. It's just the mindset was different of going through that time period.
Yeah, and it's almost like, and I think that's a great, tie into the experiences you've learned from playing sports that you've carried throughout, because that almost reminds me of like that resiliency of, okay, I have to bounce back, right? I have to, the next thing, and keeping it, like, you have to learn from that experience and be able to, as you said, find something you can carry with you, or that you can keep you motivated, whatever that is. So is that the biggest thing you've taken from sports? What are some other things that you're still, using today in your life that sports has taught you?
I think the bounce back is like other things. I always look at things with a little different lens. So I was just on a bounce back summit last night in Asia, right? I was on a call. And I don't necessarily agree with bouncing back, because, and here's why. If a rubber band is stretched and snaps back to its original shape, we think that's resilience, right? Or we pull it and it comes back resilient. So we think we throw a ball against a wall, it comes back to our hand, it's the bounce back. We can throw it down harder and it bounces higher. But in my case, the rubber band broke. In my case, when I threw it against the wall, the ball broke, it deflated.
Yeah.
So how do we get that? How's that mindset come? So I think what's going on is inside of our mind in that situation, in that the space that we're in that time, we have a level of resilience that we've already is baselined us. And now we need to grow that muscle. We have to begin elevating. So in the hurdles, there are 10 hurdles in a hurdle race, and there are 10 letters in the word resilience. And if you break all the letters down, I have a word for each one of the letters. So it's as an acronym. I won't go into all of them, but the first one is R. And R stands for me, what is the ritual that I have in place that's going to lead me to a rhythm, and that rhythm qualifies me or just gets me in a space where I could actually rise. So rhythm, ritual to rhythm, rhythm to rise. And so that's what I think about when I think about resilience, is this rise piece. But the S stands for two things for me. The first is, what story am I telling myself? Am I telling myself a negative story? If so, why am I telling myself this negative story? Or am I telling myself a positive story? Because I can choose which way to go. In fear hasn't materialized. It's what we think about. And so if we're focused on the fear and the negativity, that's how we're going to show up. But I can choose to think about something positive. But also in resilience is the S. The other part of the S, I think, is also the word silence. Because embedded in that 10-letter word resilience is the word silence. How do we meditate? How do we show up with our own voice and our own voice first? And so what I was learning, what I continue to learn, what I always learn is, when that experience happened with that coach that came down the hallway, is I'm never going to coach in that way. Every kid gets a shot. Every person. And I don't care if that's my work life or in my coaching life, everybody gets a shot, because everybody brings something unique to the table. And I have my little, my little thing, I have my card. I'm trying to look at it. I'm a maximizer, I'm a woo, I'm a developer, all these things that we have with strength finders. And I look at those really deeply, because I don't want to put people on my team that have the same thing that I have. I want to find complements to that, because that makes my team stronger. And so I don't want to be in the, my computer looking at trying to figure out if my calendar works, and I'm going to cross it. No, that's a waste of my time, because I'm not good at it. And I got to take myself away from something to really put effort and focus on that. When I can just, hire a brilliant assistant, and she loves doing that stuff. I mean, she's really good. And so she gets all that. And she gets all of what, putting together the contact resource management, because she is very detailed oriented. And then I have another two people on the website, right? So one person who's a lady, and another person is a guy. They work as a tandem, as a team. And they, I don't want to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
You need to tell me that's your job. You tell me where my website should be. Why should these interfaces
Yeah.
all work? So that's how we build our structures and our teams together.
Mm-hmm.
Not with people that look like us and going to yes us all the time
Right.
and are too afraid to say anything to
Mm-hmm.
us. No, we
Yeah.
have to have people on our team that are going to elevate.
Well, and I love that one, the idea of resilience is not, I like that you counter that. It's not bouncing back. It's completely different. It's about, like you said, what's getting you the ritual that's getting you through, that's helping you move forward. And I
Mm-hmm.
think to your point about building a team, I think a lot of times we look for people that are going to support us, right? That are going to say, this is the way, you're right, great job, keep going. And we really need to look for those people that say, you know what? No, that's not right. I know how to do this. Let me do it. So it's almost operating in your area of strength. Like you said,
Right.
if you're not a detail person, don't run your own calendar. If you're
I
not,
don't want to be better. I don't like it.
exactly, like let somebody else that's their genius, that's their unique brilliance, let them take that. So I think that's great advice, just to know your strengths and know your weaknesses and be like, I will delegate
Right.
my weaknesses to those who love it, because that'll make you so much better off in the long run. And
And it'll help your clients. I
yeah,
mean, because you don't want to spend the time in stuff that you don't do. So when anybody's asking me for a calendar request, no, you need to go Tracy.
yeah,
Because I'm going to screw it up. And I have, right? I double book stuff all the time, and
right,
all the
exactly.
time zones and all sorts of stuff. It's too much for me. You
Yeah.
know, I can do it. I'm not saying I can't do it,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes a lot of effort for me to do it. And I don't want to burn that effort when I can be focused on what I do better.
Exactly. And I was about to say, I want to know, why did you decide, you have a sports communications background, you've worked as a global sports ambassador, now you're speaking all over the world and you have inspired communications. What prompted you to go that route? When did you decide, okay, I'm going to share my story, my experience, and help motivate others to create great teams and challenge adversity in their own communities and their own corporations?
So two answers to that question. I actually started Inspired Communications way back when I was working for the United States Army.
Okay.
And so it was like 1997, probably before you were born. So
No, I was alive.
I was so in 97 I started, and it was tier missions, total Army involvement in recruiting. I would do a little kind of dog and pony show. I bring athletes on that I was responsible for in the Army, and they would come on board, and they would do these missions, right? So they would try to get troops in boots with recruiters. The recruiters asked me, hey, who was the one-legged guy that was up there telling you stories? We want to get him back. I said, well, that was me. So, okay, well, how much do you charge for that? I said, you can get paid to do this? So I said, I'll get back with you on that one. So that's kind of how the speaking began. I would tell a humor story or a quip or a poem. And so that was kind of one. And years later, about, probably 2012, I want to say, I was kind of doing these hit and misses, maybe 5 or 6 a year, and I'd just go out and do that. But I would never tell my story. I would just kind of, I would let a video do it or something else, but I would never tell it. When I got serious about it and I started telling my own story, I began to really see the power of how a story can release others
Mm-hmm.
to grow in that space. And that sparked in me kind of this nurturing, coaching, development side of me that was like not really dormant, but I knew that's what I do, right? It was like, that's what I do. I coach. I do this, and this is who I am.
Yeah.
And so that really drove me. So it wasn't necessarily revenue. It wasn't anything like that. It was all about creating impacts in the lives of others so they could blow up. They could engage. My greatest joy is when I see somebody actually learn and then elevate in their own space. I love seeing people do that. That just floats my boat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the part one. The part two of that question is an understanding. When I started working after I started with the Community and Family Supports in the U.S. Army, I started working for the United States Olympic Committee and built out a couple programs. One was the United States Olympic Committee's Paralympic Military Sport Program, which service wounded, ill, and injured service members with tools for rehabilitation by using sport. Got Melissa Stockwell now. She's a part of that program that came out. Rico Roman was a part of that program, so he came out of that. So a lot of others. And then it turned into Warrior Games and Invictus Games. So that was that piece. And in that, I was introduced to the American Association for People with Disabilities.
Mm.
In building that program, I won this award, and this whole other world opened up to me. And I began to see greatly the power of sport, not only from the Paralympic side, but what happens like when a Nelson Mandela uses sports to change the minds of an entire nation.
Yeah.
And that just blew my mind. And so I wanted a part of that to grow even greater. And in my capacity, in the role I was in, it just wasn't going to do that. So I began at nighttime working on this Inspired Communications to do that. And so now it's grown into a business, not just on the sports side of the house,
Mm-hmm.
but actually helping business professionals to hurdle their adversity, amputate their fear, embrace this new normal mindset to win the medals in their life. And that's been global. I mean, it just when I did that for the first year in 2019, I said I was going to have a year of listening. Where I said in silence, in resilience is silence. So I sat for a year, just listened. I sat quiet. And at the end of that year, a client hired me just to listen for 5 days to a leadership conference and give a 1-hour summary of what I heard, encapsulating in my story. At that same conference, a brilliant guy who is over like Kellogg's and has got a couple schools and he's built businesses and sold businesses. So he comes up to me and says, "That is the top 1% I've seen anybody do."
Wow.
Totally unexpected. It was not, I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for it, because people will tell you,
Yeah.
whether you want to know it or not, they're going to tell you, right?
Yeah.
So this was, can I give you a bit of feedback, right? So that's what he says. Oh, okay, right. So I'm like I'm in that mode, right? So, and then he tells me this, and he tells me why, and he's used me several times to come teach
Mm-hmm.
in his classroom environment. He
Yeah.
said, because the way you're putting things together, the way you see resilience, the way you see bounce back, all these things, this is just different level because you've got lived experience in it and you see it from a very different vantage point of just the academia side of the house.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. And you touched on two things that I want to wrap up with as we close out this conversation. One, you mentioned the different lens just now of how you see a lot of these challenges. Is that from your athletic experience overcoming adversity? Obviously, your unique experiences, you've overcome so much, but I think, and like you said, it's that silence, that listening, that learning, that bringing that with you. But do you see it differently because in addition to that, because of your athlete experience, because you've seen it outside of a corporate world where it's competition, it's that edge and trying to beat the other person, best man wins or best woman wins?
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think it's part of it. I don't think it's the entire thing. And
Right.
Here's why, is because when I was in high school, and I was doing this when I was writing too, is not only was I doing sport, but I also was doing music, playing cello, singing, barbershop quartets, quintets, all these things. So I had kind of this dual lens, as well as I wanted to be in acting as well. I wanted to do some of that. So I had these three kind of things that were going, and because I was, picking up a little bit in each one of them, I think was rounding me out to this person that could see things very differently. Even in my presentations, I rarely use, if I'm talking to sports people, I'll use a music example. If I'm talking to music, I'll use a sports example. So it's all these things coming in that we begin to use, and so I see it from different vantage points, and I think that's good because it shows the diversity can work for us, right? I think all those, even Pierre de Coubertin, who founded the Olympic movement, right? All those folks, guys in this case, they weren't even sports people, right? They were all science and humanitarians, and none of them were really sports people.
Right. Well, and I love that you hinted on the fact that you had other interests and it wasn't just, I'm going to be all in on sports, all in on track and field. It was, well, this was a part of me, but I also had these other aspects of who I was. And I think that's the other thing I wanted to just have you touch on is the identity piece is so big for athletes when they retire or transition. So how can athletes identify that impact piece that you mentioned earlier? Like a lot of times you need something purposeful to go into after you leave a career that you've loved for so long. So how can athletes find that new identity if maybe they weren't like you and had these other interests they were curating? What's your advice to them to find this other identity, and how can they actually make an impact like you are to help inspire other people to have more engaged in exciting lives as well? I know it's a big question, but
Yeah, it's a big question. How much time do we have? Uh, I'll try to be short. And maybe we can have another dialogue or
yeah, I would
conversation. We
love
can
to.
send people someplace and maybe we can have something else. The short answer is, if you haven't engaged in something else, do so. I mean, whatever that passion that you have is, get involved. I don't know what it is, but just do it. As a Nike slogan says. The second thing is, I had a great question come up from, I went to a veteran entrepreneurship leadership kind of entrepreneurship course. And a woman, her name is Pat Enriquez, comes in the class. She's a little tiny thing, right? And she says, "What's the most important business question you need to ask yourself?" I don't know, customers, revenue. I don't know. We all have the wrong answer, according to her. Then she says, the most important business question to ask yourself is, how are you going to dispose of, get rid of, close up the shop after you're successful?
Mm.
I said, wow, that blew my mind. I mean, I chewed on that thing for like 6 months, because that just opened my mind up for so many other things. And so, to kind of not just crush the analogy, but right now, athletes out there, you need to be thinking about, even when you get into the career, what's your exit strategy?
Mm-hmm.
What's your next, even as you are competing? Because too many times I have found, coaching Olympians and Paralympians and how to speak professionally and how to get your signature story and how to make impacts. And it's just not about you, but how you're impacting the audience. I have found that most are not thinking about the exit strategy.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about the next thing that's coming up. And because of that, we suffer. We think it's taboo. This is going to take away from me and my training.
Mm-hmm.
But my coach always told me, everything you do, John, is training. Every single thing you do is training. That needs to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Because if you are just holding on, you're going to, and I get it. I get the cycles that go, and you're just burned out from sport. And after you finish up in Olympic Games or Paralympic Games, you just want to get away from it. But guess what happens 2 years later? When
Yep.
the games start coming, I think I can go another again. I think I'm going to tune it back up again.
Exactly.
So we're seeing these, so we're seeing fights. We're seeing Mike Tyson, and he's 80 years old. And so how do we know that it's okay to be thinking about our exit strategy?
Mm-hmm.
And what we want to do next? Because what that does, it begins to set us up as we're going through. One of the one piece of advice I've always given to collegiate athletes, or to Olympic class athletes, Paralympic athletes, soldiers as well, but primarily the athlete side, that think they're going to go, on to, big and better things as far as the athleticism, is great. I love that. I want you to do it, because this is your heyday. You get a small window of time to operate, and I want you to do that. But as you're going along the way, who are the people that you're meeting?
Yeah.
Who are the people that you're meeting that are in your, so maybe you were in marketing when you were going to college. So when you meet those individuals and you get in the room with them, it's not have a conversation with them about your athleticism, because that's what they want to know. Have a conversation with them about, what was the thing that, that you went through to get you to this? How did you have to kind of fight? What were some of the hurdles and obstacles that you had? So now you flip it to so the conversation, the things they want to ask you, you ask them those questions. And they said, well, who's your marketing person? I would really love to pick their brain about, what were the steps that they took to follow that career path. And now you are engaging in a conversation and taking this with you, and you're beginning to build. The other piece of advice, I'm going to give you one more piece. This is gold.
I love it.
We travel internationally, or we used to travel internationally. When you're traveling international, our U.S. consulates and U.S. State Department have our embassies. Make sure you're connecting with that embassy before you go, because you can actually go over there and have a conversation with their team members, who are usually people that want to learn English. You tell a story, you tell your thing, and now you get to put on your LinkedIn profile that you're, number one, international speaker, you're a global ambassador, you're a sports envoy, and that helps you to, when you come back into the workplace, to jump the peers that weren't in there. Yeah. So those are kind of things I teach athletes to do, and if that's gold, then we can talk about how you can do more of that.
That's incredible, and I love your idea of it's that exit strategy, because it's going to happen, right? Whether it's unexpected or whether it's expected, it's happening.
Right.
You should be prepared for how you're going to leave it. And so I think that's a great place for us to pause. I'll say pause our conversation, because like you said, we'll find a way to continue this, because you have such great advice, such a great story. I wish we could keep going, but I've already taken 30 minutes of your time.
That's okay. Well, good.
My last question for you is, how can people connect with you, follow you, engage with you, hire you for a virtual speaking event in the next few weeks or in 2021? Just let us know where to find you.
Yeah, the easiest place, my website is johnregister.com, johnregister.com. It's common spelling, JOHNREGISTER. And so if you go there, it has all my kind of LinkedIn stuff, all my stuff. But I think we're changing the website over. They said they're not gonna mess with it until they get the new website up. I don't know if that happens. I don't know how all that stuff works. Like I said, it's not my area, it's not my bag. But I have this I always give away this pathway. It's this I've worked on this because everybody asks me, well, how'd you overcome the adversity? And I say I didn't overcome the adversity, because had I overcome the amputation of my left leg, I'd have my leg back.
Right.
So there's this pathway I began to really work on, and it's I don't think it's all the way there, but it's really close. And I talk about these redefined moments, but I'm not going to go the whole thing now. But if you want a free download of it, it's at amputatefear.com, amputatefear.com. And then I have more conversation in my Facebook group, which is the same, Amputate Fear, but it's what is it? I think it's facebook.com/groups with an S, and then Amputate Fear. You can get in that group, and we have like 250 people in there. We're just trying to grow it and just have conversations, real talk conversations. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, John, thank you so much for taking some time and taking the time out with us tonight. This was so great to connect and hear what you've been up to this past year. I hope everyone that's watching live and that'll check this out later, you got a lot out of this. There's a lot of great pieces of advice here. So be sure to follow John, check out his website, check out amputatefear.com and his Facebook group. And thanks again, John, for being here and your support of Tackle What's Next.
Absolutely. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for hosting.
Awesome. All right. We'll see you soon, John. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. And happy holidays, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.